Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start the Transportation Advisory Board meeting for, what day are we, April 10th, 2023. And give me a second here. Do a call to order and a roll call.
Taylor Wicklund.
Here.
David McInerney.
Here.
Steve Lehner.
Here.
Diane Christ.
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough.
Great, let's move to number 3, where we're going to approve the minutes from the last 3 preceding meetings. Since last meeting, we didn't have a quorum. And come to find out that maybe we shouldn't have had the meeting last week, but I think we're okay with moving forward with approving the minutes from December, January, and March. So let me ask the group, are there any changes to the minutes from the last 3 meetings? Great. Can I get, do we have to have a vote? Yep. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve those 3 months' worth of minutes.
Can I get a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Evidently, it does have to be unanimous, yeah.
Motion carries. We'll go to communications from staff.
Great, we have a couple things to talk about. I'm going to turn it over to Kyle Haworth. Did I pronounce that correctly? And he's going to talk a little bit about the Third Avenue meeting that we had last week. Thanks.
Yeah, so April 6th, last Thursday, we had a public meeting at the library just north of us about Third Avenue improvements. That'll be happening this summer along with the water project that's happening on 3rd Street from Sherman to Sunset. We had a pretty good attendance of residents. We were able to explain improvements we were making, and then have a question session where residents can ask additional questions, have staff respond to them. Then we did get a bunch of comments. We're going to go through those and address those through our website on City of Longmont. And then we'll make some project updates and hopefully have that project started this summer and completed by late summer.
And I would note that we had 2 Transportation Advisory Board members attend, at least 2 that I saw. So not sure if you want to save that until your comments at the end, or if you have, I'm not sure how you want to do that, but we can hear from you at the end or at this point. Yeah, anything you want to add?
Three. I'm hitting 3. It's not.
Oh, now it's very different. No, I just want to commend city staff for answering all those questions, especially when it did not go necessarily as procedurally planned. And then Kyle, I'm assuming you saw my email, so, the only one concern I do have is from March tab meeting. You know, my memory could be wrong, but Bowen and Third did have stop signs on in the March tab, and then it was changed. My only concern is because it is considered a high crash, or the composite crash index is higher from the crash report, so I'm just wondering if just pedestrian crossings will be sufficient. So that's all.
There. Yep, I did see your email. Sorry, we've been dealing with CDOT fiscal year ending procedure, so been swamped for this Monday. So I'll check what was presented. Sorry, I wasn't on the last tab meeting, but I'll check what was presented there. One issue we come with having stop signs at multiple intersections or multiple crosswalks is it shows that there isn't as much importance as each crosswalk is. So reducing the amount of crosswalks shows that each crosswalk, the crosswalk that is marked, is point out there is a high pedestrian volume there. So that's something we want to keep in mind when trying to let drivers know that there is a designated crosswalk and you should be paying more attention. But if you have more crosswalks, you lose that effectiveness of those areas. So, but I'll double check the signing on that section from the last meeting.
Cool, thank you.
I was very encouraged to see the turnout from neighborhood residents. And I know there was some strong opinions expressed, but that's appropriate for that kind of meeting. So I think it was a very effective example of public outreach. And I commend the staff.
Thank you. If that's all with that, I did want to report too that we've gone after 2 different grant opportunities for transportation. One of them being what's called a Transportation Alternatives Program grant for Kaufman Street. So we're looking at the extension of Kaufman Street south of First, where it would actually go down to Boston, and looking to try to get an additional $1 million for that project. So that's what we're asking for there. It does federalize the project, which is a little bit of a concern for us, so we'll have to go through that. We'll see if we get the grant first of all, and then we'll have to decide as a city whether that's something we want to do for $1 million worth. We used to say a minimum dollar amount for federal grants was $1 million, and that's kind of changed over the last couple of years. We're starting to see that it takes so much administration and administrative work that it's usually not worth it to go for grants for $1 million, which just sounds ludicrous, but it is the fact of life is that we end up spending so much time and labor and monitoring. So anyway, that's one of them, and then the other one is we're looking at, and this is from the direction from a few of the folks from council to look at microtransit, which is basically like an Uber or Lyft kind of system, but and we've talked about this a little bit with this group, but it really does require maybe 4, 5, 6 small vans that would kind of be available around the city at all at the higher peak times when people are wanting to travel. But basically you would be asked to like meet at a intersection of some streets, maybe with some other people, and those 6 passenger vans would then come pick you up within 15 minutes of your call and then take you wherever you need to go within 15 minutes of picking you up. So 30-minute total trip is what we're looking for. And we think we can do it for a certain amount of money so far in reaching out to these groups that actually provide this service. And they are private companies at this point. So the idea is to ask for $1 million again from what we're doing is going through our congressional delegations. So through Negus's office, Representative Negus is now our representative, and he's very open to these congressionally designated spending categories, which are just renamed earmarks. These used to be called earmarks, but now we can't call them that anymore. So we're asking for $1 million of help. It would be startup money, and then we would use other funding sources along with RTD funding sources, because we'd be offsetting a lot of what they're doing and providing competing service, quite frankly, but they would be willing to give up their call and ride services that they have in town and take some of that money and put it into what we're calling microtransit. So that's we'll have more on that as we move forward. We really need to have a fuller discussion with this group and with city council on what that means for Ride-Free Longmont. That's one of the places that will be likely impacted, but we understand there's a lot of love for that program within the city, and we've done a lot of work to keep that program going, so we don't want to give that up. But if we can get a better system that provides better service, that's what we're looking for in that. So those are a couple of things we're working on these days, and just some updates. If you have any questions, let us know.
Phil, do you have to have 6 people in order to call for a ride?
No, that's just the capacity of the vans. So they're smaller vans, which is something else that we've heard from city council over the years, is that we have too large a bus system or buses for the size of our community. There's a lot of reasons for that. We can go into it later, but yeah, they don't have to be full.
Okay. And could you be going different places? And I'm thinking about the tab board. We've talked about, a ride share arrangement to and from city chambers.
Right. Ideally, if you're going to the same place, and they have some pretty intricate software, detailed software that can really figure out how to combine the rides so that they can pick people up with certain vans that are going to specific destinations and make it just one large, one
Big loop.
joined trip. Yeah. And then have the other vans go to other different areas. But they really are trying to look to really maximize the service of these vans.
Thanks.
And then, Phil, I have one question on the microtransit. Is there, because we'll be hearing a lot about this, assuming in the next few months, but is there any example cities that we could research independently so that we can educate ourselves what this means?
Yeah, I'll send this group a list of all the different cities that we've worked with, as far as at least speaking to about their examples. There's a lot around the country. The one locally is Lone Tree. So they've actually set up a system where they're working with RTD to pay back some of the services that RTD was paying into a call and ride service and using this service instead. They have a slightly different, it's not as turnkey, I guess, as what we're looking for. We're looking for one company to just basically do it all. So that might be the difference, but we're working with them. They've invited us down for a tour, so we'll see how that goes, and then maybe grow that tour as we get more closer to something that's real on this. We really do need the money to get it started, and we are working with our public works group and the street fund dollars to see if we can't use some of that street fund money, but it's really based on how important is this service to the city.
When you were researching other cities, did you come across any that have vans that just run up and down major streets, major corridors? I'm thinking back 50 years. When I lived in San Francisco, I could walk to Market Street and pay $1 to a private van operator. I think they called them jitneys at the time. And they just ran up and down that major corridor. Is that concept still alive?
Well, if there's a market for it, certainly that could be something that another private operator or this private operator could provide. What we're looking at is keeping some of the fixed route, because some of it's very successful, especially along Main Street. So those buses are usually pretty full during most parts of the day. So we don't want to get rid of some of those fixed route services. We don't want to get rid of all fixed route services in favor of this necessarily, but what we'd like to do is mix and match, I guess, and get the best blend that we can of kind of this more call and ride, more on demand. I mean, it's much more on demand call and ride than what we have today. Right now, the call and ride, I think you need at least 4 to 8 hours notice before you are able to get a vehicle, and there's only 2 vehicles running around in town, and so there's a couple issues there that we're working through, but this would offset that, and we do want to blend it with all the different transit pieces that are going on. The local transit fixed route and then the bus rapid transit that's coming online in likely 2026, if not before.
With RTD running on 30-minute headways and 1-hour headways on the weekends, do you think there could be room for both? Or would RTD not go along with that?
I think we want to start from that location, or from that point, is that we have both operating at the same time, understanding that RTD has shown that has said that they're excited about this program because it could offset some of their resources and they could put them back into maybe the regional transportation piece that we have lost a lot of, especially the express trips to Denver and those type of things. So what we're hoping to do is offset some of what RTD is already putting out there with this service. So there might be some places where this service really operates much more efficiently than RTD. And I think just by the market driven forces, those pieces will kind of wither on the vine a little bit. But this should be, we're hoping this is a better service. And so we're hoping that this really does pull people, especially when you're trying to get to the Northwest, the Northeast, Southwest, Southeast areas, not that spine that's Main Street. When you're trying to get from those areas, where a lot of our new growth is happening, quite frankly, with density, a lot of that density needs to be offset with some good transit, and RTD can't provide it. So this is what we're looking for to supplement that.
And would these micro transit services require riders to have mobile phones? Are they mobile phone based?
They are mobile phone based, but they can also provide. We're working with the companies we've been talking to. We're making sure that, and in our scope, we will have a lot of requirements based on equity, and that there be maybe some type of tap card that you can recharge fairly easily. There probably won't be any cash based to this system, but there will be a call element of this as well. So you should be able to call in or use your smartphone to book a ride. And if you call in, you'll have basically every language available to you because that's the way they're operating now. They can send that call to an interpreter to do any language conversion or interpretation.
Very interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, it's been an interesting process for sure.
Couple questions. I know you mentioned the funding sources. What's going to define success for the program? Like, what are the KPIs, metrics? Is it ridership? Is it, availability? And then what is the delta between if federal funding, let's say, runs out? Is it RTD that picks that up? Is it a combination? Have you gotten farther down the road to kind of determine the success of the program?
Well, we're really working with RTD they have this new partnership program that they're rolling out, and we're going to have RTD hopefully come next month and talk to you a little bit more about this and, ridership and the metrics and different things, the data. And so it'll be really interesting discussion. Hope you bring lots of questions for them. But the measure for success will really be our in-mode split. If we can actually move more people to the bus system and measure that as far as number of folks using the buses versus using vehicle or using a private vehicle. And that's really the key to this. That's the last piece of this is a 15-minute pickup and a 15-minute trip without having to own a private vehicle is really the critical full sentence that we talk about when we say these things. So there will be metrics, there will be measures. The measures will be a lot from whoever the private contractor is. They are very careful to measure that and really want to provide the city with some very good data on how many more people, and we should be able to easily measure that versus the ridership we see today on RTD.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that's communication from staff. Any comments from the group for staff on that? Okay, we'll move to public participation. What I show is I've got 2 folks. We might have another because I saw some late newcomers come in. Brian and Garrison are the 2 that I have. So when I ask you to come up, can you let us know your full name, your address, and we give each speaker 3 minutes to share their thoughts. So Brian?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Lehner and members of the TAB committee. My name is Brian O'Brien, and I live at 321 Gay Street. My wife and I have been witnessing the traffic situation versus pedestrians at the Central School in Thompson Park for a couple years now, and I felt an urgent need to bring it to the City Commission, City Council's attention a couple years ago. And I know we've been in a tough situation with people working remotely, and you've had some changes of staff. And we appreciate staff having meetings like that meeting at the library about Third Avenue. It's not an easy job for sure, and you certainly, with this growing community, have a vast network of roads that all have so much different needs and speeds, shall we say. The reason that we're so concerned when we see all these kids coming in is that there are no buses that bring people to this school. So essentially, in every morning, school morning, you have children and parents arriving from all four directions. The school is surrounded by Fourth, Fifth, Gay, and Ross, I guess it is, and the signage is quite outdated. I spent 40 years in construction and have met every federal, state, and local criteria, and I know that they're all different, and it's not easy when you have a school that's 100 and something years old, beautiful old building, but I really would implore you to do something about the traffic around the school. It's a big problem, and there is a neighborhood group that's building ahead of steam, which I think these gentlemen had probably the fortune of meeting some of those folks, and what they're asking for is not unreasonable. This school could be protected with some paint and a few signs, and I think after 2 years of asking, I'll be honest with you, the main guy, Angstedt, who's not here, at this meeting last month, promised us in the meetings that we would get an update on the school area progress or lack thereof. They started doing some work after somebody was hit and killed, unfortunately, on Third, and painted a few lines, moved a couple stop signs, and then everything stopped. And Kyle, new gentleman, but he's informed me the project's being put off for Vision Zero, and I'm all for Vision Zero. I think that's great, but I think it's downright shame that that these parents are being put off, and what I see is a head of steam building that's not going to go away. It should be dealt with. It's nothing like getting a federal grant or having to redesign an entire street for a busway. It's just some parents and some children. If somebody would come out there and look at it and address this group, I think you'd find that they're not wild bunch with flamethrowers. They just want their kids to be safe. Thank you.
Sir, if you could maybe stay at the podium, I have some questions for you. Oh, okay. Well, let me just say that you and your neighborhood group are exactly what we're looking for when we're talking about Vision Zero. Vision Zero is to have 0 fatalities and reduce any serious injuries. And I actually had a child that went to that school years ago, so I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can only imagine the condition it's in now. So I'm just wondering, and if you would consider maybe if you have a neighborhood group going, if you might participate in some solution based ideas as we go forward with Vision Zero. Our board is considering implementing, various solutions and with the participation and agreement of the community. So I'm glad you brought this to our attention. Thank you.
There is a neighborhood group. I don't lead anything. I speak for myself, but I'm sure they'll appreciate that, and I do see them in the neighborhood, and I'll let them know of your comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is Garrison.
Hi there, my name is Garrison Bennett, and I live at 2359 Sunrise Drive. I'm here today because I saw that there's a opening for the Transportation Advisory Board, and I am currently a rideshare driver for Uber and Lyft, and someone who's been a longtime champion of public transportation. And I'm among the citizens who is like probably some of the most disappointed about seeing how the regional transportation has been for RTD, seeing that they have both failed to deliver on both a rail or a rapid bus. And I sit on the sidelines eagerly seeing projects such as the 119 rapid transit projects. And yeah, I want to see, like, I want to play a more active role in helping ensure accountability for these projects. It's also very exciting to see that there is a microtransit option. Someone also recently did Flex Ride, which is RTD's version. It was over 20 minutes late, and like these two bus drivers are just running ragged. And so, and as a rideshare driver, I've seen a lot of the people that I take just to get to work, and I tell them about the Flex Ride, but I also know that it's not that we like to have something that actually can deliver both on time and not have to look like days in advance to be able to book a ride would be amazing for our community. And so I look forward to seeing where this microtransit conversation goes. And yeah, I hope to be of service.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to be talking about the board openings here and next item. So thank you very much. That's very timely to bring that up.
Great, thank you.
I think that's it. Is there anybody else on public that would like to make a comment? Okay. Phil, why don't we move into the information items, number 6?
Great, I'll try to make this quick. It really is exactly what the last gentleman just spoke about, is we have a deficiency on the board. We have 3 open seats, as you'll see. In fact, as you also mentioned last month, we probably shouldn't have met because in our bylaws, it says if you don't have a quorum, you're supposed to adjourn immediately. So we'll remind ourselves of that next time. But it does put us in a pinch, and we are looking for more members. So I was hoping that we could request 2 of you to help us select members as part of the requirement that we have now to video these interviews and then send them up to our city council members so that they have a better idea of kind of what your thoughts are. And we do have recommendations at the end where we do recommend folks, you do, as the TAB subcommittee. We can also just do this as all 4 members, but last time that was a little tricky even to get 2 people to show up at the same time with city staff. So we did run the meetings for you. We did record them. And so I don't know, I'm pointing to Kyle, but it was really Stacy and I who kind of organized that originally, but there was 2 of you, and it was very helpful to have.
Yeah, it was myself and Liz Osborne. I was going to say Osborne. That did that, and I think that actually maybe is more effective than all 4 with schedules and what have you. So I mean, I'm more than willing to volunteer again. If you need somebody.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to volunteer? It's not too much of your time, I guess. I don't know, Chair Lehner, if you want to say more about your time commitment to that. Okay.
I can volunteer for
Okay.
May.
We don't need formal action. We put this as an information item, but if there's general consensus on the board, we'll move ahead with Chair Lehner and Vice Chair Christ to be the two people who are part of that subcommittee. If that sounds good.
I'm not volunteering, so there won't be three. Just real quick, because you mentioned the bylaws, I think we do need to review and revise those. Because I was reading them and they're, 5 members instead of 7. And then maybe there's a little bit procedural stuff that we should maybe also be in line. I'm thinking, Chair Lehner, just thinking of public invited to be heard, like P and Z, planning and zoning, they do 5 minutes, and maybe, and a lot of other boards are now doing 5 minutes, so maybe we should kind of fall in line with other boards and commissions. So just an idea and a thought.
We reviewed the bylaws last April, and maybe it's time to do it again. That was a year ago, but I'm thinking we had revised some of that out of there. So, are you looking at the most current version from April 2022?
The one that's posted on the city website.
Ah, okay. So I'll
Let's
take a look at
that.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. But good suggestions. Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah, Phil, can we just confirm that what's posted on the website is actually what was updated that we voted on? Just
we'll
as
do
a
that.
housekeeping?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did do April 11th, we did pass of 2022, we did pass so almost a year ago exactly, we passed the bylaws, so we'll make sure that the newest version is out there. That's not good if it's not, so we'll change that.
Okay, so we'll move on to the action item.
Great, so the action item tonight should be posted in your packet as well at the end. We did put together the resolution that we're going to bring up to City Council on April 25th. And there's been some confusion, so we apologize for that, but we did have to move it from April 11th to April 25th. That gives us a little bit more time too to work on this and see if there are any changes. Hopefully this is pretty tight, what we've put out there tonight. This really is about talking about Vision Zero as something that we want to move forward with. The resolution is kind of procedural in that it's just trying to tell the public what the council wants to do. So it's a resolution from City Council kind of explaining some of this. There's nothing binding to the resolution necessarily, lawfully, but it does set us in motion to go after the action planning process, which is the next step. We also like to do the task force piece. I think you saw that in there too. There's a task force that we'd like to assemble as part of this. So there's a couple of things, and I think the resolution just tries to lay those out a little bit more clearly for the public to understand. So are there things that we are missing in this resolution that you see that are critical? Again, it's not a binding resolution, so we're hoping we don't get into the weeds too far as wordsmithing the resolution down to something that, is perfect, because that's going to really come in the action plan, is what our hope is. The action plan will be the more perfect piece of this, where we really go through and what we're going to do. And Kyle and I are going to be a part of that effort as well. So the action plan is something that goes out typically to a consultant. We'll do a request for proposals. We'll have a scope. We'll bring the scope to you as well, just to make sure that we're on the same page as that, and that we're following our resolution if it gets passed. So that's what we put in front of you tonight. We'd love to hear your comments and thoughts on that. And at the end, we're looking for a motion and a second and approval of this as whatever you come up with, a recommendation to City Council so that we can go in front of them on the 25th and say, your Transportation Advisory Board supports this resolution, or not.
Real quick question, and I understand it's a resolution, so we're not talking about changes in policy and what have you. But is there any, I don't notice, I didn't notice it at least, any mention of budget, either by year, as, and also just language in particular to it, other than the action plan? So is that generally how these resolutions go, or, and I know you don't want to attach an amount to it so much, but a conversation and or a reference to the fact that this is budget impacting the plan and what we're talking about here?
Yeah, typically these resolutions are very broad, and so we don't get into those details of budget. So that's why you don't see anything on here about that. It basically kind of starts us down the path, right? It's really that initial step of saying, is this the path you want to take? Yes or no? And so, again, for the public's view of this and to show that, you know, the city is willing to move forward on Vision Zero, this is that step. I mean, council has already directed us to move forward with Vision Zero, quite frankly. And so there is that view of why are we even doing a resolution? But I think it's more for that public piece of this to say the council is committed enough that they'll pass the resolution on this if that's what they so choose. But it is kind of an extra step, and we don't go into the details typically on these.
I'm going to use our expertise on the board here with our liaison, Councilmember Yarborough, and your thoughts on this.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the resolutions are typical. And so, yeah, we usually with resolutions, unless you're changing one budget item to another budget item, if that's the case, maybe that will be stated on a resolution, but usually the budget amount or anything like that aren't on the resolutions. So it's like a summary of the objective of the plan, basically what the resolution is. So, so council will go through this and say, oh, you forgot this, maybe, something that we may not see in there that we feel that should be a part of that resolution, and we may amend the resolution and then approve it. So, yeah, basically, from my understanding, when you say that feels like a summary of whatever the plan is, of what was presented to us previously, and we basically already approved moving forward with the Vision Zero. So I don't know exactly why we have to have the resolutions myself, but that's the way it's been.
I think it's also to let people know, council member, that City of Longmont is moving forward with this. And so rather than wait for the action plan to kind of get going later in the year, we are letting our partners know that we are committed to Vision, that you are committed to Vision Zero as a city, and that we're moving forward. So it is kind of an extra step. We apologize for that, but it seems to be an important step just to make this really public and make sure people understand in the public, in the city of Longmont, what's happening, and kind of the steps that we're starting to outline in that, and what it's going to look like when we go to an action plan.
It's like we put our stamp on it. Yeah. Thank you.
I have a number of comments that I think you would consider wordsmithing, so I'll table those for now. But I do want to bring up 2 points. On the second page, line 2, it describes the goal of Vision Zero as achieving 0 fatalities by 2040. Why did you feel a need to include a date?
Well, thank you for that question. That's a great one. That was pretty critical of this whole resolution, and this resolution, going back to the reason for why we put it together, was to actually formalize a date, so we have a target to actually point towards or try to reach. Again, starting the path with the resolution, but where do we end? Where does the path end? And the idea is in 15 or so years, so we're adding a little bit to that, but in 15 years, we'd like to, I think that's typical target date of, gives us time to really start putting resources that Kyle was talking about earlier to a Vision Zero effort. Have that action plan, and the action plan may come up with something different. It may say, hey, this is achievable in 10 years, or maybe it'll take 20 years. So we need to work within that. But our initial goal is really that 15-year outlook to achieve zero deaths on city streets by 2040. Also, I think if I can just add, if you don't put the date in, people don't believe you. They say, well, Vision Zero, that's a great thing to say, but if you don't have a goal, and we've seen this with other communities and with Denver Regional Council of Governments, who has a Vision Zero plan for the region, which we were trying to fit under that umbrella, but we really need to do this as a city and do it on our own. But they got a lot of grief for not adding a target date, and so they did end up putting in a target date. So that's very helpful for people to understand exactly what you're trying to say, rather than just trying to kind of hit a target that nobody really knows what you're trying to do. And I think that's why it's in the first line of the whereases.
Phil, I'm looking at page 1, line 7, where it says City of Longmont from 2000 to 2021. Related crashes have resulted in 92 fatalities. And I wonder if we could add how many serious injuries occurred during that time as well.
Yes, we can do that. Thanks.
And then on page 2, lines 6 through 9, talking about task forces and including community members, I'm wondering if we can utilize our TAB recruitment process to have some community outreach to help with this project. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have to add that verbiage, but I'm understanding you to say that you would like an action plan from the TAB board to help with this program.
I'm sorry if that was confusing. The idea is that the action plan would be almost like its own standalone plan for the city to move forward with this, and so the task force would come up with
The action plan.
part of what's needed for the
Or
action plan.
suggestions.
Yes.
Or concerns, yeah. All right, so I'm thinking that as we're recruiting for the board, we'll probably have many applicants, some of which might be better suited to pioneer some task force operations. And then also, I understand there's quite a load on staff members. The city does a lot, considering how many staff members you actually have. But I just wonder if there's a way to define how the TAB board can assist with helping you gather data, helping you gather information for this program.
We can certainly include that in any kind of, as we start to build the task force, we could certainly build that into that creation of that and into the action plan then. That would step into that as well.
Okay.
And make sure that we're including TAB at those levels, and that we're able to look at other people who have interest in this topic and get them involved.
I have, well, maybe 2 other things that relate to the resolution. On page 2, line 17, you're going to prepare an annual report to City Council. I wondered if you could also do maybe a monthly or quarterly report to the TAB board, just so we stay on top of where we are and are consistently moving forward.
We can certainly add that. I think
Okay.
that's reasonable to talk about a quarterly, maybe biannually, but
We included that, I think, on the action plan for the board in the last meeting that we had a quorum.
for the crash data, right?
Yeah, we talked about including Vision Zero from the first quarter all the way through the 4th. So we have a continuing discussion about it. And then I agree with Board Member McInerney about line 2. 2040 seems a bit long, maybe I was thinking more 2030, which would be 8 years. And perhaps we need to get into it before we know how long it'll take us. But in addition to that, we had talked last time, that might have been January, about the try before you buy method that Jersey City used to achieve Vision Zero, in terms of, we try a few solutions, temporary, and see how they work, see how the community adapts to them or approves or disapproves of them, see how that works with the community, and then also, what kind of results we're getting metric wise. I think it's a good way to gauge effectiveness before, committing capital improvement money to structures or solutions. So, and also it's a nice way to kind of prove the value of the project before we put it on a budget line item. And then I just yet again mentioned recruiting community partners. So Garrison and Mr. O'Brien, who's just left, so I didn't get a chance. But it would be a good place for concerned citizens to get involved in their neighborhood, because they know better than any of us what's going on those streets and what might be effective. So, and that's all I have. Thank you.
I would just like to second Board Member Chris's comments, specifically about kind of the Jersey City success. And I think that's also a helpful tool to get buy-in from the public and neighborhoods, because they can visually see quickly what is possible, and then maybe also provide some critiques, and then it can be quickly changed before we, again, put in capital improvement projects and funding towards, or large amounts of funding for it. I too was also kind of surprised by the 2040 goal. Board Member Chris said maybe 2030. I was just surprised to see it, just because I know the history of Vision Zero, where Scandinavia is still working on it 30 years later. So it's a very hard job to retrofit roads. So it has to be kind of incremental. But I'm glad there's a date to at least aspire to.
Well, I might just suggest that you could scratch the date if you'd like, and we could just put that into the action plan, as far as what the action plan thinks we can do based on, a little bit more data review. And so this is a number that's kind of pulled out of the sky a little bit, as far as 15 years.
It's good to be ambitious, though, too.
Right.
So, I do like the 15-year mark.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Greenwald, may I ask, what is happening on the 25th? Are you looking for an action plan by the 25th?
No, the 25th is to take this resolution to City Council for formal adoption. And so what we'd like to be able to say is, your Transportation Advisory Board adopted it, or basically recommended approval of this as well. So you're not an adopting board, but you recommend to City Council, and that's what we're asking to do, is make a recommendation to City Council. And maybe it's to say kind of the things that you're saying right here, so that would be included in your motion. But what we're looking for is something that recommends this to City Council, or recommends a version of this to City Council, so we can take that up to them and be honest about what you did at your meeting, and how you felt about the resolution.
Okay. Is there more detail, and this would be for Councilor Yarborough, is there more detail that the council would like to hear in terms of how we might implement and what our plans going forward might include? Would there be questions regarding this resolution, do you think?
I don't think, I mean, that's really hard to say. But looking at the resolution is positive that there is a date, because that probably would have been a question. And so The date is good. That everything I see on here looks good to me. So, but you know, council is just not made up of me. It's not me, not only me. Um, I think mainly just making sure that the action plan is coming and we know that there's a task force that will be formed. And that task force, which is stated in here, will consist of making sure that there are people within the community made up, you know, who are making up that task force. That's very important for council to know. So as long as we know there's an action plan coming, and a task force that's being formed to help put that action plan together, that's pretty good for us.
I have a question and a comment. The question has to do with the roles of the Vision Zero Task Force and city staff. On page 2, lines 6 through 9, sets forth that there'll be a task force convened, and it identifies the types of people who might be a part of the task force, but its only role is identified as integrating key components of Vision Zero. And then on the following lines, 10 through 14, the resolution indicates that it's city staff that's going to develop the Vision Zero action plan. So my question is, will the task force be involved in preparing the action plan? Or what will their role be relative to city staff?
Well, part of the vision, I guess, for the task force is really to start talking about all the key components of the community that need to come together to make Vision Zero work. And so that was a big component of the task force, is just to say it's going to take a lot of different groups to come together to make this work. And then the action plan will kind of codify that in a way with a planning effort that shows how all those groups are going to have to interact. So bulk of the work's going to be done in the action plan. The city staff, probably me and Kyle, or a combination thereof, will need to put together, like, get the ball rolling, so to speak, with the request for proposal, so we can get a consultant on board to help us, you know, people who have done these action plans for many different communities. So we'll be the ones who kind of initiate it, but there'll have to be this huge outreach effort that involves all the members of the task force then once we're doing the action plan. So it can't just be, here's the task force, we got your input, let's go to the action plan, let's get it done, let's go. It's still going to be, here's all the people that we think have to be involved at the task force level. Then there's an action plan, keep those people involved, and then reach out even more out to the public to see and to make sure that they have the information and the education of how this is going to work. Because what we heard at the Third Avenue meeting was very thoughtful and interesting about, you know, how people behave out in the public. And this is what we're trying to change, is some of those behaviors. And so that's going to take everybody. We had enforcement officials at that meeting. They spoke for a little bit, but there was a lot of heated debate about what their role is and how they can fix the problem. Then it turned into, how do you design it to fix the problem? How do you communicate it and educate people to fix the problem? So it really is going to be, I think this is what the action plan is going to show us, is that this is really a large effort, and it's much bigger than just putting together a plan and going by the plan elements. It's bringing all these people from the task force back together over and over the course of the whole lifetime of Vision Zero, which I'm assuming goes on for the rest of our days here. So, and the rest of the, you know, the community is going to have to really put some effort into it until we can hit that zero mark consistently. And like you mentioned, severe crashes are part of that too. So it's not just fatalities; it's also how you impact people at all, you know, at all levels of those different types of crashes that we have. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or sorry, didn't mean. I've just been talking a lot. So.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I would say just not having the goal of Vision Zero is the goal, but also a big part of it is having a downward trend of serious accidents and fatalities. So if you look over the last few years, it's been increasing 25, 30% in areas of serious crashes. And that's not just to Longmont, that's Colorado-wide, that's nationwide. There's just been an uptick in accidents. So the biggest thing we're trying to tour with the goal of 0 fatalities by 2040 is start a downward trend, and how do we get that downward trend started. So that's a big part of what Vision Zero is. It's not just in 2040 we have 0, we're going to have a continued effort to get down to 0.
And will you be explaining this to the council on the 25th?
Yes,
Like
anyway,
the role of the task force and
we will try I'll do exactly what I've done tonight and just try to explain it with Kyle and Jim present as well to talk about kind of we've heard a lot from city council, so we understand, we think what's happening. The resolution again is one of these high level pieces, but we'll need to have those further conversations about how we move into the task force, what that looks like. That'll come at a later date, and then what the action plan looks like, what the scope of work is for that action plan will be critical. How we want to work the action plan into what we're trying to do with the transportation mobility plan, which, some of us want to kind of keep those really separate, and some people want to make sure that they're integrated well, and I think we obviously want them integrated at some point in time. So it's going to be all those pieces fitting together. There's a lot of work to be done in the next really 9 months to make this, create this baby. I hate to say that, but it's really going to take a lot of work to get this off the ground. And as you mentioned earlier, as people mentioned earlier, there's an issue with staffing too. So we're going to ask for additional staff just to focus on this, because it's going to be critical on the front end of this that we have staff member who can just devote their time to this and organizing all these different pieces and things that you've heard about tonight.
Great. I have a much better understanding now of the role of the task force. So if council already knows that, or if you're going to explain it to them on the 25th, I think that's great. I don't think it comes through well in the resolution, but maybe it doesn't have to. My final comment has to do with what I think is missing from the resolution as it stands now. And that is to tie the concept of Vision Zero to city budget allocations. Resolutions are great, but they don't really affect change. They don't really accomplish things. Things get done, I'm learning as a board member, through budget allocations. So I would propose for the board's consideration adding another clause to the second page. I'd put it in between the existing lines 16 and 17. And it would read, "Be it further resolved that each time city staff present transportation-related budget proposals to city council, they will identify how and to what extent such proposals will further the objectives of the Vision Zero action plan." And again, the idea that I'm proposing is to just keep Vision Zero in front of council, bring it to council's attention each time that budgets are discussed. What do you think?
Would you be okay with us revising that a bit, just to be a shorter comment about whenever any kind of project comes forward to city council in the budget, or any kind of budget item comes forward, that Vision Zero be considered in that request? I mean, I think you've added some words there, and I'm just trying to shorten it so it's succinct and to the point of what council needs to.
I think that's a fair compromise. But
Sure. I would just say, let the record show that I'm going to give board secretary a written copy of the proposed addition that I just read into the record.
Great, and if we add that in some capacity,
Sure,
the board
sure,
will
I-
still be okay with,
Yeah, I,
because eventually we do want the motion and the second, we want the the motion and the recommendation to state without having to say all the wording things. I think we have some things that we definitely have talked about as far as a quarterly rather than an annual report, severe injury crashes included in the first statement. And then we'd like to say, add this line between 16 and 17, another, be it further resolved that every time city staff brings a transportation project forward, that it shows how it applies to Vision Zero. I mean,
sure.
if it can be stated that simply, but
I don't
I don't want
object
to
to
take
that
words, I don't want to take
condensation.
words, I haven't seen the whole written piece, but just trying to get this done in time for a council communication that needs to go out in the next week. So that would be great if we can do that.
All right, yeah.
And I really do appreciate the comments from everyone of the board members because it's been very helpful and it does help us move forward with this, but I do have to be, we have to get this to our legal staff 2 weeks prior to the meeting. So this will be a push, but we'll do it.
Any other comments from the board before we take this as a vote, as a recommendation for staff? So I guess we'll need a motion and then a second and then a vote to approve with the changes that have been put here as well as verbally added, whether we get a vote to approve.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve this resolution with the changes that we made. And I'm looking forward to council voting on it, so.
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So it's unanimous.
Thank you very much for that action. Very much appreciated.
And that's it on our action plans on the agenda. So we can move to adjourn. Well, I'm sorry. Let's get some comments from our board members. We'll start down on the end.
You know, this is nice, a short and sweet meeting. So, I would like, one idea popped in my head about the interview process. If maybe we all could be on like an email chain to kind of propose questions for you guys to ask, just so that, we're all aware of what, what's asked, et cetera. And what we all feel is important as well. So, but yeah, thank you, staff. That's all.
I do have a question for the board. Back in January, we had discussed a study session or a special meeting with the idea of discussing some of the objectives we were talking about with a task force in regards to Vision Zero. What is the feeling? What is everyone's feeling? Do we need a special session to discuss further what we might be doing and how we might be implementing Vision Zero as a group? How we can best assist the staff?
It seems to me that if we get ongoing updates from staff about how the task force work is progressing and how the action plan is coming together, we'd have opportunities on a monthly basis to give our input. So does that sound right to you on the staff, that we would have ongoing opportunities to get involved or make make our comments part of the task force process?
I think that would be appropriate. It's something that you would request if you want ongoing monthly updates, bi-month, every other month kind of thing. I'm not sure how often you want to hear about what's going on if there's nothing going on, but we would certainly, as the task force got going, we could provide that as a monthly staff update to you.
Did you envision having a member of TAB as part of the task force?
That was our thought, and then also have a member of TAB probably we'll have to review this a little bit more, but we've talked about having a member of TAB actually be on the committee to choose the consulting firm. So we'd ask you to be on that committee for the action plan as well. So we've typically done that in the past for these larger citywide efforts, is make sure that we have a TAB member to be able to do that. So there's a couple of places where you could insert TAB influence in that. So, and we would certainly report back as you requested. That could just be an ongoing item from staff.
So I'd ask Board Member Chris, does that seem like enough input from us? Or do you think there's some kind of additional process necessary?
I I think any help that we can provide to staff to as relates to Vision Zero. I don't know if monthly meetings are enough, just because we have other things that we need to talk about as well. So maybe, simply having a study session on intersections, just because from the crash report, 60% of crashes occurred at intersections. So that tells me statistically that maybe there's something fundamentally wrong at intersections. And maybe we need to, my dream is to, become the next Carmel, Indiana, where we have roundabouts majority. So, but we can snicker about that. But so I think a study session on certain topics might be helpful that we don't get to talk about in these monthly meetings. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, first off, we're an advisory board. We don't set policy. And we're really going down the road where we're trying to dictate policy here. And so we help staff as stakeholders in the community in regards to almost our opinions. Hopefully they're informed, which I appreciate everybody's opinion here is informed. But I don't want to overstep our boundaries in terms of what we can and can't really offer. It's almost like, advice. So while it's laudable that we'd like to have roundabouts in every intersection, that's policy. That's not something that we can dictate because we're talking about, obviously dollars. The work that the board is, or I should say, our transportation department has already done, much like the conversation around tying, budget initiative to Vision Zero. Again, that's very laudable, but they have budget proposals that they've been planning out for 5 to 7 years that we can't necessarily tie to Vision Zero. So we're always kind of in motion, even though we have a direction that we need to go to. And I just kind of warn everybody that we can't tell them what we would like to see done and do as it relates to some of these things, other than we can, again, offer our advice, look at it. I think looking at the resolution and adding some things, absolutely. Injury-related crashes are very important, and that's, as important that we need to look at as well. So that's only my comment is that I think letting the board do what they need to do, we get updates from them, I think on at least a bi-monthly, maybe every 2 months or quarterly, because as Phil noted, not every month there's going to be movement on this, unfortunately. It's just the way government works sometimes. So that's my 2 cents on it. Feel free to offer anything else or in rebuttal of what I've said.
Thank you, Chairperson Lehner. In response to your suggestions, I think what I'm asking for is an opportunity to understand where all the other board members sit. I learned so much during these tab meetings that maybe I would have added more. For instance, Board Member McInerney, that was a great addition. And, I have my perspective as well. And I do feel like all of our heads make a perfect board. And, and so I would ask for a special meeting just so that we can hash out how it is we can best define our role in this Vision Zero to help staff. Two things have come front and center for me. One, I participated in the county commissioner discussion of the bus rapid transit along 119. There were about 12 different people that spoke. Many were members of the community, and they felt that even though they had gone through much of the discussion, their comments were not maybe listened to, were not passed along to the powers that be. And the county commissioners did conditionally approve it with 37 of their own points that they wanted to see addressed and an additional addendum for safety concerns. And then the next thing is the annual meeting that the city council had. It just pointed out to me how much more the city needs support from the Transportation Advisory Board, from all the boards, from community involvement. Actually, the more we can do, I'm not overriding them, but the more we can do to fill in some gaps, I think the better and quicker we'll get some of this done. I don't want to see burnout. We have an excellent staff here. I really appreciate you all for all that you do and the time you spend with us. And I just want to find a way to fill in that gap for you. So, would we like a vote on a special meeting? And one or the other of us, I suppose, could call for a special meeting, and then it would be, I don't know that we would have to have a quorum to get something done, but I would like it to be unanimous that we would like to get together to define a position for ourselves with Vision Zero.
Yeah, I'd have a procedural question about that. Can TAB have study sessions or get together outside of our monthly meeting format? I know that would require allocation of city staff resources to make the meetings happen. What does our charter say about that?
So I'll read from the bylaws. The April 11th bylaws, 2022. Special meetings of the Transportation Advisory Board shall be held at a time and place designated by the officer calling the same and shall be called by the chair or vice chair or by the executive secretary with approval of the chair or vice chair. Notice thereof shall be given to all members at least 48 hours prior to the meeting. So that's about all it says, but it does have to be public. So we would have to post it as a public special meeting. I'm wondering if it's something that you might want to do as we start to get past some of the budget items that we need to take in front of you. If you wanted to take one of your kind of little lighter regular TAB meetings and make that into, we could work that regular scheduled TAB meeting into more of a study session, work session if it's a lighter agenda, but you can also call it a special meeting if you want.
We could have a special meeting, say at the library, maybe around the 24th of April. I'm just saying it's another Monday.
No, she just said we can't. We would have to use city staff.
Do we have to use city chambers?
It has to be public.
It has to be a
Yeah.
public meeting.
Okay. We're doing it. So, Mr. Greenwald, when would be a light tab meeting?
We could push off RTD for May and to go to June, possibly. We could do it in June. June might be a lighter meeting if we keep with our current schedule with RTD in May. So I would suggest usually we take one of your summer months off because people are just out doing other things with vacations or other things like that. So we usually wait for something to kind of converge in June, July, August, and usually we skip one or two of those meetings. So
Our next meeting is May 8th, is that right?
correct.
And what are the expectations in terms of having recruits for the transportation board by then?
Well, we'd like to start interviewing in May so that we're done. Well,
So that
need
we
to-
have someone for
we need to
June.
be done for June. Yeah.
So June might be a great time, since we're adding 3 seats, to kind of get on the same page. Does everyone think that would be a workable solution? Okay. All right, let's do that. And thank you for entertaining my ideas.
Okay, we'll go back to, I guess, comments from the board for this evening. Taylor, start with you. You went? You already went? Okay. Vice Chair.
So I greatly appreciate you accelerating this Vision Zero, Mr. Greenwald and Mr. Hayworth. And I would appreciate if you have any ideas as to how we can define our role in this mission to help you, that you've passed that on to the board. And we'll do what we can. And thank you, other board members. Really appreciate all of your points of view. Without you, it'd be like half a topic. So, thanks so much.
Yes, I also appreciate input from staff and the community tonight. I think that there is nothing more important for TAB than to advocate for Vision Zero policies. And I look forward to, with the other members of TAB, being a part of implementing Vision Zero for the City of Longmont. Thanks.
Yeah, and last, I just wanted to add, yeah, everybody's input was great tonight. Councilmember McInerney for the points on the resolution, I very much appreciate. One thing I did want to add, Phil, if we can add as an action item, is the Gay Street with Brian O'Brien. I do think that's something that I'd like to get an update from Jim, because I know he said he was going to address that, and I know he wasn't able to make it tonight. But if we could just add that as maybe an update, because I would like
Sure.
to maybe get some.
I think I think there was some confusion from the last meeting because the person who showed up from there was more along the lines of Longspeak and Gay. So we were thinking that was the discussion that was supposed to happen, but we had realized that we have done a lot of work in that section, and we are going to do the overlay and just restripe it as is because it has a really wonderful bike lane, parking lane, and through lanes. So we may change the width of some of those, like the through lanes may narrow down a bit in light of Vision Zero and things that happen with kind of the complete streets look. But this topic that was brought up tonight really reflects back to what we talked about with Third Avenue, but it's more related to the school piece of that. And I know Jim and Caroline, prior to Kyle coming on board, did a lot of work out there with all the residents to work on better more visible crosswalks, changing some of the signs that he talked about as far as being outdated. So a lot of that work had been done or is in process of being done this summer while they're in, while the school is off. So I think we will have Jim come back or Caroline and also Kyle, and just talk about all the efforts that have been put in around the school as of late and what the issue is, because it is really, they're not separated by very much, but they're two separate issues. And so there was the school issue, and we were working on that before some of the tragic issues on Third Avenue happened. So we were working on that prior to that, and we recognized that some of the signage was out of date, and wasn't clear why signs were put where they were 20 years ago. So a lot of that effort was well underway, and so I'm a little confused, but we'll wrap our heads around what the issue is. And I do think, Mr. O'Brien does see a lot on Gay Street, and so we just have to be cognizant of that and work toward addressing some of those critical issues.
Yeah, just a progress report would be great. No, I appreciate that. Absolutely. So thank you. Yep.
One more thing, what is the status of the revised crash report for last year?
You got an addendum in the email.
Yeah, sorry, we sent that email this morning. So if you missed it, I apologize for that. We did try to get it as soon as we could. I think it came in at 4:30 on Friday, when it was finally all revised and ready to go. So we got that to you first thing this morning when I saw it. So my apologies for the delay in that. We're busy working on next year's report. So we look forward to providing some revisions to that and making it all that much more better. And hopefully you'll get to see it much sooner as far as in October when we usually see those things. So
Great, thank you
we
for
just
that
had that.
update.
One of the big pieces of that update, and I'm not sure if it was clearly stated, was there was a lot of changes in data reporting between 2020 and 2021. So you saw poor Caroline trying to knit back all of this information into a way that went with the previous data. So it's all new reporting data that she was trying to put back together with the report. So I've done that in my career as well, so I understand the frustration she was having. So, but it's tough to take a new way of reporting and try to make it with try to show the trend lines. So she had a difficult job, and that's why it took us till December, which is fairly admirable, really, for her to take that short amount of time. And so we'll have better. We have it under control now, so we'll be able to get it to you in time next year or this year.
Great, thank you.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? I apologize. I'm so sorry. And now she's shaking her head. Councilmember Yarborough?
Thank you, Chair. No, it's, no worries, I don't mind. I just want to say thank you to the staff for all that you do, and I know sometimes it's very challenging. And I also want to mention to the board that Chair was right, that, about trying to implement policy, and it's, I know you all are so eager to make change happen today. I get it. But there are some processes that has to, come into play. And I think that's the whole point of creating that action plan. And then, get in the task force, because right now they don't have an action plan. So it's kind of hard to say what they need right now from you all. And I think that I know staff doesn't have a problem with saying what they need and asking you. So I think once they get going on it, they'll ask you what they need and tell you what they need, like they do with us, with council. And so just thank you for your patience and your eagerness and your passion. That means a lot. And so we know that anything that this board brings to council, we know that it was, with eagerness and passion, and also with equity. So thank you.
I think I got everybody. So we can get a motion to adjourn unless there's anything else.
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second that. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.